R2 Cents.
With Oscar.
Ladies and gentlemen and non-binary folk, just to be inclusive with everybody else, welcome back to R2 Cents. It is I, your host, Oscar, and the 20th of January is upon us. Welcome once again. It is National Take a Walk Outdoor Days. Take a Walk Outdoors Day falls on January 20th every year. And as the name suggested, it is the day to step outside for a walk alone or with someone. It's especially in California, we get nice sunny days every day of the week, just about. So it's a great day to take a walk any day of the week, at least here in California. If you live in the Midwest, well, I don't know how your weather sucks over there, but if it sucks, it sucks. Anyways, today I will be talking to a gentleman that's into something that most of us never get into and nobody even thinks about. We always kick him around every day, but we'll ask him many questions on the subject. My guest today is Ethan Penner. I hope I said that right. I apologize to him if I didn't say that correctly, but let's have him join us. Ethan,
how's it going?
Good. You can hear me. Great. All right. Good. How are you, man?
I'm doing well. Your name's Oscar, right?
Oscar, of course. Yes, you got that right.
Thank you for having me. I really appreciate it.
Hey, no worries. Thank you for accepting, man. I've hit a rut. You know, it's one of those times where it's hard to get a hold of people. So I was fortunate that you answered back, and I was excited. I was like, yes, I get to do another one again.
But yeah.
Thank you for replying.
It's been a busy last month in terms of just like not only putting content out, but also just what's been happening, because my page just sort of blew up in popularity. And, I remember seeing your message a while back, and I just, people have been messaging. Sometimes I regret putting the, DM me if you ever have a question about this, because tons of people DM me. I got to answer all these DMs, but I wanted to make sure I got back to your message, and I'm glad I did, because I really wanted to meet.
Thank you. I'm glad you did reply, because times are hard. I guess people are trying to figure out things out, and people get busy, and like your page got popular all of a sudden, and I was fortunate that I you got a hold of me back, and like I said, thank you for answering and wanting to do this. I usually don't prepare anything for this. I just go off of just wanting to know what you do and how and why and what interests you about it and all that good jazz. But before we get into that, please plug all your pages, whatever you have going on, plug them and please email me all your stuff so I can add them to the description as well, so I can tag you and all that.
Gotcha.
And tell us who you are, what you do, and like I said, why.
Yeah. So I'll just go ahead.
Yeah, go ahead. Just go from there.
All right. Yeah. So my full name is Ethan Penner. I'm a Binghamton University master's student specializing in tectonic geomorphology, not just geology. As my, I'm the rock man on TikTok. So I just kind of, people see me breaking rocks open, but I do have that actual scientific side where I do research. I'm working on a thesis right now. In terms of, aside from that, I started on TikTok about a year and a little bit ago. I was just kind of posting random videos. Didn't have, it was COVID, the pandemic, like a lot of people just trying to make do and solve their boredom whatever way they can.
Of course.
But as I got into my senior year of college, I wanted to find a way to apply my background and apply what I've learned in geology in my major to my videos. And I figured that'd be, something people might want to see. So I started What's Inside That Rock, a very simple series where I crack rocks open. I find a rock, crack it open, show what's inside. I identify the mineral. And, sometimes I'm right, sometimes I'm wrong. I'm not an expert.
Of course.
And part of the alert and part of the enjoyment of my videos that I get is I get to interact with all sorts of people, especially the people who comment on my videos and will say, actually, it's more of this. And I'll be like, I didn't know that.
Mm. Yeah.
I'm never claiming to be an expert in my videos.
Right. You could get a lot of teaching from TikTok if you want to call it that, right? Good or
Yeah.
bad. I mean, it's still some teaching. Yeah, but how like this is a subject that people nobody even ever thinks about.
Mhm.
Like if you would have probably, I mean, there's only one person in my 30 years that I've been alive that I've met other than you now, that has been into rocks and actually has a comment to say about a rock and know what the types of rocks and stuff like that, right? And he was an older man that I met. He was probably in like its early 60s already, and he was very knowledgeable. He would talk to me about it, but like I approached you, to talk to you about what you do. It was the same conversation that I had with him, where he would explain me, oh, there's this rock over here that literally nobody's touched in like millions of years, or this rock was probably in the depth of the ocean a long time ago, and now we have it out here, and he would get into the details of it, but it's most regular folks, they're not even thinking about that. And it's what we're standing on, a rock, and we should be more, I guess, wanting to learn, but I guess people are into different things, obviously, right?
Mhm.
So I don't know if it would be something that everybody should be required to know about the rock that they're standing on. Do you get what I'm saying? Or am I being confusing?
Yeah,
I think
yeah.
I'm confusing myself.
No, I get what you're saying. A lot of people don't know what geology entails. They just think, I get asked constantly, don't you just open rocks? Don't you just look at rocks for a living? And, that's it is what geology is. We're all looking at rocks, but in different ways. I don't think everyone should be required to take a geology course in college or whatever you take for education, because there's a lot of areas. And I think, if you were going to take geology, you'd have to learn all of it. I think everyone should know at least environmental science and have to know like the basics of that, because there's a little bit of earth science that has to do with that.
Mhm.
But knowing the different types of minerals, that's what I'm here for. That's what I'm trying to identify. Because people will send pictures and say, what is this rock? And I'll say that's just a quartz, a very common mineral. Or
Right.
they'll say I bought this crystal off of the internet, but I don't know whether or not it's actually what it was described as. Can you tell me if it is? And I'll say, well, that's a little bit harder to do. I'm not familiar with the exotic types of minerals. I haven't gotten my hands on many.
Mhm.
So that's where my expertise kind of stops. But, since I'm especially in the Northeast region of the United States, I know that geology much better than the entire country.
Mm.
I know that better than I would know the entire country's geology. So if someone out west were to ask me about a rock, I would say, well, I'm not sure about that. Maybe better to contact someone else who knows a
Right.
little bit more. But that's what my page kind of revolves around. I do small scale, basic education in terms of that. So like almost anyone can understand it, instead of trying to say, oh, well, this gem has this kind of structure, which is because of this chemical composition. That at that point, it gets a little bit confusing for people to understand if they haven't taken a geology course. So I try to keep it at a level where they'll just say, garnet, yes, it's inside this rock. If you've seen garnet before, this is what it looks like.
Right. Are those like not just talking about rocks itself? Is there like a type of rock that's like the most expensive type of rock? I mean,
I do believe there are some very rare rocks. The ores ranging from a thing called tanzanite to a mineral called painite. They're very rare. In terms of a price per carat or per gram, as most measurements are done, I think obviously gold is up there in terms of its price. Diamond actually surprisingly not
that's where I was
as
going.
expensive. Yeah,
Yeah,
a lot of people think a diamond is, but emerald, rubies, and sapphire are actually more rare, and I'm guessing more expensive per carat.
of course.
Uh, but definitely gold, I think, is one of the most expensive ores on the planet, especially.
Yeah, no. What I was saying is like the type of just rock, other than like diamond, like is like that's what
Oh,
everybody
other than
knows. Other
those.
than diamond or gold, like that, because obviously gold would be the most valuable one, right?
Mhm. Yeah, yeah.
Above
I,
everything else.
yeah, definitely. That's a good question. Uh, people will find amethyst and think it's expensive. I don't think amethyst is that expensive. I think let me think. Malachite is pretty rare, but it's also not that expensive. I think it really just depends on the area of the world that you're in, especially
Oh,
because if you're in a area where you'll find like that an ore is very common to find compared to the rest of the world, it might not be as expensive in that area, but in the global market, it might be a little bit more pricey. But I'm not sure exactly. There is actually an area of geology called economic geology, and this
okay.
is what exactly it specializes in, finding these ores. And it- you know that's an area that most people love to do because of course it makes money.
Right.
But I didn't get the chance to specialize that in that in my university, but maybe one day.
You know what? You know, right now that you said that there is a side of economics for economics for that side of the
Mm.
science, right? That you're saying of rocks, I should say. I was thinking that sounds like that's like the physical, like a physical NFT, right? Because it's like you could say it's a rock, like say the same. You could say it's a picture of something, like
Yeah.
I don't know. It's just a thought.
Yeah, no, I've heard about the whole NFT thing. I've barely gotten my mind wrapped around it. But that's the thing because I've heard about NFTs and how their artwork and how people are saying, oh, no one should own art, and I think the same kind of applies to the earth, where you're taking something that wasn't made by you.
Right.
It's not your work compared
Right.
to an NFT, which may be someone else's work,
Of
but you're
course.
taking that rock and you're claiming it and you're selling it to someone else. It's not even your work. So, the entire thing in a nature respect is very, very odd. But of course, it's been going on for a while, so you can't do much about it.
Right. That's a side of I guess capitalism we got to live with, right? I guess.
Yeah.
But it works for some people. It helps out. So to each his own, I guess. Right.
Yeah, yeah, of course, yeah.
I was gonna say, but what about volcanic? Are they more valuable volcanic rocks or than like the rocks you find like at a river? Is there more
Yeah.
value on them, or is it?
Depends on the rock. You'll get a rock called pumice, which is where you get a lot of what's called vesicles, gas bubbles form in the magma. When it erupts, it creates these air pockets, which make the rock incredibly light, as opposed to, say, uh, obsidian, which is the rock that most people know as being a volcanic rock. Very, shiny, very glassy um, volcanic rock. That's the more rare of the rocks that people think of. You can even get geodes in volcanic rock if a space, a cavity in the
What is a geode? I'm
magma.
sorry.
The geode,
Yeah.
the geodes are the rocks that you get with the dull outside, and then you get the opening in the middle with the crystals growing. So I
Oh,
actually
okay,
have
okay,
a
yeah, yeah. Okay, I
yeah,
think I've
yeah. So
seen
I
it.
have I have an amethyst here, which like
Oh,
this is what
okay.
the outside will look like, and then the amethyst geode will have all these crystals lining it, and it'll go around in like an oval,
Oh,
kind of like that.
wow. Now, how long did that piece that you're holding in your hand? How long did it take to make that? Like, I mean, obviously it was nature, but like, how long did it
Yeah,
take?
it depends. I think it's got to be millions of years on the scale. It's got to have time for the crystallization, which involves heating and pressurization to allow these crystals to precipitate out of the matrix that they're in. So if you have, say, a million years, you might get very small scale crystals, tiny little specks that still count as a geode,
Okay.
but it might take hundreds or up to billions of years for a crystal to fully form all these beautiful, you know the
Hmm.
more time you give something to develop, the more beautiful it likely will be in terms of the crystallization.
Now, the coloring, how does the coloring happen?
Hmm.
Like
The
for
color, yeah.
like a ruby, it's red, and what you're holding in your hand, that's purple. I'm guessing, right? If
Yeah, yeah,
my color's
purple.
not correct.
Amethyst is the key color of amethyst is purple, and I have one back here. I'll go with
That's
my
amazing.
fluorite piece. This is called fluorite.
Oh,
Has
that's
these unique
cool.
green and purple colorings. Both of these are, they're obviously different in both crystal structure and
Right.
color. And this mainly has to do with the chemical composition. So you'll get a certain, I'm not sure of the chemical compositions of the fluorite, but I know that amethyst is a form of quartz,
Mm.
which varies slightly in its chemical composition to allow for that purple coloring. The different chemicals and elements you get in a mineral are what determines not only its color, but also its crystal structure. So if you get a certain grouping of elements and turning it into a chemical compound, and you get all those different compounds linking up in their atomic structure, that's how the crystal starts to form its lattices. So over time, you get more and more of those chemicals adding up, forming these crystals. But in a fluorite, it's not going to be the same process. It's going to be the same idea, but those different chemical compounds are going to lead to a different, not only different structure, but will also lead to the, of course, like the light rays that are bouncing off it, reflecting different colors,
Oh,
absorbing different colors.
really?
Mhm.
That's crazy. Wow. I would have thought it was just like the fumes that were to happen, whatever happened to be there at the time, that's what happened. But light has a lot to do with whatever color they turn out to be. That's
Yeah,
very
yeah. So like
interesting.
it's the same thing with any object in the world. Like the different properties of the chemical composition that makes it up, and the different physical
Right.
structure of it has to do with what color we see. But you were right in a way what you just said, how the chemical composition at that point, what elements and chemicals were present at that space, do dictate how what mineral it will be at that time, which will then in turn influence the color.
Oh, that's crazy how that happens. But this is what I'm thinking right now that we're talking about the chemicals that make the that are the compound that makes the quark and all that, right?
Mhm.
The event that's happening at the time for that to happen. What is it, does that mean that at the time when the very beginning of that stone when it was being formed, when it was still a gas, um, what was likely happening at that time? Do you think there was like earthquakes or what was going on at the time, or volcano
Yeah,
eruptions?
so it depends. A lot of different crystals can form under various conditions. Most of them, what happens is that you will get in in a or in a a sediment layering. Say you have different layers of soil, clay, whatever sediment is present. You will have what's called ions, which are forms of chemicals and elements that have positive charges, negative charges. That's just chemistry.
Right.
But um, at any given moment, due to what's usually heating from the mantle. The heating is it precipitate it goes upward in
Right.
the crust from the mantle, and like you said, it can have to do with volcanic activity because you'll get more heating in that certain spot,
Mm-hmm.
which is mainly why volcanic rocks are really crystalline a lot of the time because you have more heat influence. But like I was saying, with the mantle influence in the heating, that heat from the mantle will then cause, say, if you have a bunch of ions in the sediments that are layered, you have all these ions, that heat will cause water to evaporate out of that because heat obviously evaporates water.
Right.
Those ions will precipitate out into that soil matrix. That's what causes these chemicals to therefore crystallize. As you add heat, you're, you know, taking the water that was there, making it into a vapor. It crystallizes, forming different crystals based on the elements. Then, depending on how much space and the conditions that are there, because you don't always get a crystal that looks like this.
Mm-hmm.
You
Of
could get a
course.
crystal that is just a lump. It's just, you get solid pieces of quartz that aren't crystal. That's what happens when you have uh, no space for the crystal to form. It has to just kind of do whatever it can manage, but it's the same process. It's just the really clear structured points for crystals are when you have ample space. It's like the ideal scenario for a crystal to form.
Okay. Now, the rock that you hold in your hands,
Yeah.
even that one or the other one,
Oh yeah.
whichever one,
Yeah.
or let's say A diamond. I forgot. I forgot the name. I almost did. Or a diamond. Now, the difference between those rocks is that the time it took for them to form, or it's just like what we're talking about, just whatever the environment was at the time.
Both. It
Oh,
takes different times for different minerals to form. Some volcanic rocks, say granite, can take one amount of time, but you can have obsidian or any other type of rock, whether volcanic or metamorphic, that takes a much longer time to form, and that will influence the structure and the look of the mineral itself. But like you also said, like I mentioned, the mineral composition is very influenced, or very influential in the mineral that will form. Yeah.
right, of course. Now you said you're a geologist, right? Did I get that right?
Yes.
Okay, of course. Now, would you ease my mind a little bit? Now, in light of recent events, I mean, at least I've noticed more recent volcanic activity around the world. Now, am I right to assume that there's more, or we just know about more now?
It's tough. I'm not like I mentioned before. There are tons of different areas of
Right, of
geology,
course.
uh,
But
and
we were just
and
asking
I
for our
know,
opinion. Shh, don't tell them
of
that.
course.
We'll just say you're right. Don't worry about it.
Yes, yes.
I'm just kidding. Go
So
ahead.
in terms of the like accounts I follow,
Right.
I follow different earthquake geologists, different volcanologists who specialize in this especially, and they all I see from them is that they're reporting on tons of earthquakes. And a lot of people don't know there are earthquakes around the globe constantly.
Right.
Not necessarily the eights, the nines, tens in the Richter scale, but more along the lines of one, twos, and threes, which you
Right.
don't necessarily feel. There are also, even if there are earthquakes that are 4, 5 in scale, they'll be deep in the crust, so deep that we can't even feel them. But our sensors, our geologic sensors, can understand them.
Okay.
In terms of volcanic activity, you know, it's definitely something more rare to see because there aren't just, there's tons of plate boundaries, which is what forms, or which is what leads to earthquakes,
Hmm.
plates colliding, plates separating, any plate movement that
Right.
causes friction. Um, but the volcanic activity is when you have, that magma coming up from that plate activity, from that hotspot, the mantle forming magma chambers, and I do see how it can seem like there has been more recent volcanic activity, but like you said, it is that we have so much more advanced equipment to monitor this stuff. The
Right.
reporting on it is very advanced. I don't believe there's more activity necessarily. Possibly more severe volcanic activity could be happening if the somehow the mantle is heating up more and it's being more active. But like many geologists have said, the Earth has been around for 4.6 billion years, and there might have been more activity, billions, millions of years ago that we didn't know about. So I don't think any of the recent activity is, it's definitely in terms of the last like 20 years,
Right.
maybe different, but in the larger scale, it's just, happens time to time. But one thing I want to note is that there is a way for geologists to quantify these events, which are called, they're events that are scaled by like 1 in 1,000, 1 in 10,000 year events,
Okay.
which is based on the scale and the activity that happens. So if you have like say the volcano that happened in Tonga recently, um, that event was described as, I believe, a 1 in 1,000 year event,
Okay.
and something that was, say, the Krakatoa. I don't know if you're familiar with Krakatoa. It's
No, not that
it
part.
was one of the most violent volcanic eruptions in history. Um, that could be something more like 1 in 1,000 year events.
Is that
So
was that recent, or was that like
no,
one
that was a
in
very
an
long time
event?
ago.
Oh, okay. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
So these events, we can quantify them. And I think it's kind of like you might hear a scientist say, this volcano is due for an eruption. That happens sometimes where scientists will say, this volcano is due for eruption. This, spot hasn't had an earthquake for this amount of time.
That's what they say about California all the time. We're due for one. We're due for. What does that mean?
Yeah, yeah. So it's just basically by their measurements, it hasn't happened in a long time. So you should be expecting one in the near future.
But does that
Not
mean
like,
it will?
no, it does not.
Okay, all right. So it's just like there might be a chance, like a 50-50 chance. You would
Yeah,
say,
yeah.
oh, okay.
So because geologists have never been able to predict these activity levels. That's a whole thing where people will claim that they can predict earthquakes and volcanic eruptions, but no one has been able to. I think there are some studies that are being done in which they can try, and they're not proven methods, but there are attempts. But like I said, and like you just reiterated, it's not a given 100%. If it's a 1,000 year and it's been 1,000 years,
Mm-hmm.
there's no telling whether or not it will actually happen, whether it will be another 1,000 years. But especially like you mentioned, California, it's a state where there are constant earthquakes and you always have to be prepared. And, the infrastructure has to be prepared as well.
Right. Yeah. Well, I work construction, and what I hear from like experienced, like older men, like they know what they're doing, type of dudes that they've done it like all their life. What they say is that the houses nowadays they're making them maybe too stiff. So I mean, I don't know if that's good for earthquakes or if we're getting more or not. I'm not saying we are, but like if we were, but I don't know if that's good or not. But I don't know anything, That's why I ask questions.
Of course, yeah, yeah. I also don't know much about the infrastructure of California and what infrastructure is best for earthquakes. I believe that more elastic materials that can sort of bend and conform to sudden shifts of in movement are best, because if you have a rigid and brittle structure like concrete, especially, that might crumble a little bit easier under a sudden change. And depending on the structural integrity of a building,
Right.
one small change can just collapse the entire building. So that's what you have
Right.
to make sure you take into account.
Yeah. Well, what about La Palma? You mentioned Tonga. That I was going to ask you about that one. But what about La Palma? What happened there? I mean, because there was a lot of things flying around about that. There was even conspiracies that it was the government making it erupt, and I don't know what else. But I contemplate all of them, because I enjoy a good conspiracy, so I listen. But what I'm asking is, now they were saying that a a big part of that land was going to fall into the ocean. Now, in did that ever happen, or what happened with that, or did that stop? Do you know anything about that?
I haven't caught up mostly on La Palma. I believe I don't even La Palma in the world is in.
Spain.
Oh, it's in Spain.
Yeah.
Okay. I heard about La Palma. The name was very familiar, and I think I heard about it in the news. Um, I don't believe it fell into the ocean. That's not something necessarily that happens a lot of the time. I think the volcanic eruption and the magma, and all of the volcanic rock that was being created probably covered a large part of the island. But when you have especially an island like that, I don't believe anything happened. I think, if I'm correct, there were evacuations probably. Uh,
Yeah.
I've seen in the news that there's a little bit of, there is some severity to it. But yeah, like I said, I wish I was more caught up in the volcanic. There are people who are much more,
Right. No, I
you know,
mean, I'm just asking for your opinion. I mean, I
yeah,
know, you got your own thing going on, so you can't focus on all aspects of is it geology? It is right, right?
yeah.
You
But
can't
I
focus.
still try. I try to know
Right.
as much as I can.
Right.
But I do want to reiterate that uh, volcanic eruptions will happen in a lot of areas, and uh, like in the Tonga volcanic eruption, which was interesting because it was an underwater volcano. It wasn't an
Right.
above ground volcano. And the photographs of the volcano itself, and uh, the landscape that it was on, the force of the volcano just decimated the area.
Yeah, it
And
seems bad.
knowing that and seeing the images of Tonga afterwards, they're in so much need for help. And I saw a lot of people saying, "Oh, but what's going to happen in California? Are we going to get mega waves?" And people are saying, "No, it's not really going to happen. That you're going to get bigger waves." But I think the majority of the attention needs to go to Tonga itself, and because they're being displaced, there are people who unfortunately lost their lives, and that the effort for those places needs to be much better, because I feel like the worldwide effort at its current state is not enough.
Right. Yeah, definitely. That's what that's what I wasn't aware of, because I kept hearing whatever I kept hearing was just, oh, there's a tsunami coming. That was it. But I didn't hear anything of the areas that were close to that. Like you say, Tonga, they're decimated. I just thought they had an eruption and people were far away because it was in the ocean and nothing happened. But what happened? Did they get like a fallout, or what happened?
Well, so obviously they had, the massive eruption that, spewed ash for miles around,
Right.
volcanic rock plummeting from the sky.
Whoa.
But the main cause, I believe, of the displacement and the loss of life was from the tsunami effect,
Oh,
because it
so
was underwater. That activity level causes pressure waves to permeate throughout the ocean.
okay.
Displacing all of that water will lead to massive waves forming, is which is why in California they didn't really feel anything, but in Tonga, much closer to the volcanic eruption center, the waves were much more immense, destroying infrastructure, destroying you know the environment. It wasn't just infrastructure; it was wildlife,
Now,
plants.
did it get most of the island, or all the island?
I don't think it got all of the island. I think it got a good portion. I think the
Mm.
higher elevations, especially, were safer, but the main uh, areas that were what's the word susceptible to the effects were along the coasts, which is what the theme is for the entire world. With climate change, with any sort of uh, environmental reaction, the coasts are the most susceptible because they're right next to the ocean.
Right.
Any change in melting ice or eruption or tsunami will destroy any buildings.
First ones to be affected are those small islands, right? What about
Oh, the
Hawaii? Did they get it just as bad? Because I know they were pretty close too, right?
Yeah, I believe so. I don't remember hearing anything about Hawaii itself, but I know that I think apparently a while back ago they did have an eruption that was going on that was destroying a lot of homes and displacing a lot of
Was it in
families.
Lanai? Was it? Might
I'm
have
I'm not
been.
sure. Yeah,
Might have
I don't know enough to speak
Right.
on the topic.
I don't know.
I don't.
I hear these things and I hear the names, and like they get stored somewhere in the back of my head. And when I'm having a conversation with somebody that's more knowledgeable than me about it, it comes up, and that's how I'm a little more aware of what you're talking about. Because like I said, I've only met one person who's
Yeah,
like
yeah.
you. They're into rocks, and yeah, but that's crazy. What about is New Zealand the other big landmass around there? Is it on the
No, New
west
Zealand
coast?
is an island. There's also Australia.
Australia's the one, right?
You have New.
Did they get it bad too? Because they were pretty
They
close
must have
too.
gotten it. I think they must have felt it. Uh,
Um,
Probably not as bad as California, but I think they probably felt it. I
how?
think most of the news coverage has just been basically about the eruption itself. I've seen graphs that show the pressure waves permeating through the atmosphere, which you could see, and I've seen all these cool graphs that are being created, but
Yeah,
I'm not seeing enough about the fallout from the eruption itself.
yeah. What happened with that? You know what's crazy? I mean, I know it hasn't even nothing to do with you, but I just thought about it. But another thing that was happening around the eruption at the time, it was apparently there was like a Russian submarine around there, and they were saying that it was them who caused it. It goes back to what I was saying earlier, the conspiracies, right? But I
Yeah, yeah.
contemplate them, so forgive me, but I contemplate them.
No, 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 no worries. Yeah, of course. Have you heard about all the stuff that's been going on with between Russia and Ukraine, and all the the threats of war that have been happening?
Yeah, a little bit. I'm not too informed on that because, listen, was it last year or whenever the pandemic started? See, I lost track of time already. Whenever the whole pandemic thing started, I really got into paying attention to the news. And I think I freaked myself out because I went through a stage where I was like, I'm too scared to do anything. I don't want to do anything. And it was just like, more or less like a depressing state of mind that I got into because I was paying too much attention to whatever was going on. So then I started paying attention to like people like you, like what they do is more interesting than paying attention to the news because it could get pretty crazy. And yeah, so
Yeah,
that's
I stopped. I didn't stop watching the news last year because I wanted to know what was happening. But like you said, it got super depressing, and also with the election, with different economic activity, it's all they ever talk about. They only talk about politics. They only ever talk about the economy, but they don't cover issues and these are important issues if you're a certain type of citizen. But unfortunately, it doesn't necessarily get influenced by us.
mm-hmm.
You know,
It
the
does
common
not.
people don't always have a say in what goes on. And especially with all these different activities of war between Russia, Ukraine, the threat is being imminent of different conflicts between countries. You know, we're worried about what's going to influence us on a day-to-day basis.
Yeah.
And I don't want to know about how, this celebrity is doing this one thing on the news. Like I want to focus on the interaction between, like you said, between different people like us,
Right.
different people on social media, whether they're coming up and from nothing to talk about scientific issues, because especially in a time like this, climate science, environmental science, any sort of science, plus the people who are trying to take economics into their own hands, educate the public on how they can improve their situation. These are the people that should be getting more attention and exposure, because the people on the news, they're not going to talk about that. They're just going to talk about what's going to help the people who are already higher up.
It's one-sided. It's their side only, and whatever the narrative is for their side, that's what gets pushed, unfortunately.
Yeah.
And then people get really into it. It's like a sport, right? Like people fall really deep into sport. I don't know. Are you into sports? I'm not.
I am, yeah.
You are? What are you into?
Mainly into soccer. I've a
Okay.
little bit into football and
Okay.
basketball, but definitely soccer. Yeah.
Yeah, I played soccer. Well, that's where I started playing soccer in middle school, then all the way through my sophomore year. Then they didn't like my attitude because I think I talked back a little too much and they kicked me out. So I went into wrestling after that. And then after that, I forgot completely about soccer. And I was just into like jiu-jitsu. And I did that till I was 18. And then I found partying and, I made some bad decisions and which eventually I realized that, here we are.
Yeah, it's a thing among many college aged kids where I was lucky that I had sports in high school. I did soccer. I did 2 seasons a year of track and field. I
Awesome.
did that all throughout college or all throughout high school. And then once college hit, I wanted to be on a sports team, but I didn't get to be on. I go to Binghamton University. It's a D1 school. I didn't get to be on the teams. So I
Oh,
tried intramural soccer, but
okay.
then that only has so much of an influence in terms of like the schedule. And like you said, partying was the thing to do in college. And so nowadays we regret what we did, but it was fun in the moment. It was a way to socialize.
Oh yeah,
But
I don't have much regret, but there is I'm not going to say I don't at all because there is parts of that I wish I would have made better decisions,
of
but as
course,
far as regret, it's what made me what I am today and I'm content with the decisions
wouldn't
that I'm
happen any
making
other way.
today. Right. Right,
Yeah,
of course. Yeah. Yo,
that's
so
important. Yeah.
go on. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
No, I was just gonna say that's important to realize that that is who you are as a person today, to know the effect of your actions. And you know obviously you're happy with how you are today, and you're doing this podcast, which is great.
Yeah, I'm working on it. I mean, I haven't been working as hard as I would like to, and I always give myself many excuses. I'm very good at that. I almost gave you an excuse today. No, I'm just kidding. I will not do that to you. Excuse me. I like to say that this is what I've really kept up with. there hasn't been many times where I've been like, oh, I shouldn't do this. Other than when I barely started doing it, because it was hard, to keep pushing myself to do it. Now, what I'm finding hard is finding people to have conversations with. But I'm thinking about going back to my email list, and just seeing if anybody wants to come back again, just to keep it going. Because I hate when I stop working on something because I feel like it slows me down. Like when I started, I was struggling at the beginning of this conversation. It was really hard, but with a little pushing myself, it works. So
Yeah,
I am
yeah,
where I'm at because of the decisions that I made, and like I told you, I'm happy. But there's
definitely.
things that I wish I would have done different. But it is what it is. Can't do
Yeah,
nothing about those.
yeah. I wanted to, if you don't mind, go back to the how you said struggling to work on the projects that you have now and find new projects. That's exactly where I was at a year ago today. I my TikTok channel had just gotten exposure. I was in dreamland. I was getting thousands of tens of thousands of hundreds of thousands of likes, and I said this couldn't get any better. I'm making these videos that I love doing. It was hard because I did something that not a lot of, especially geologists, but also STEM major influencers on TikTok don't do. They go out into the field to do something. I go out
Okay.
into the woods. I find these places. I break the rocks open in the cold, you know, working with my hands, and then I come back and make the video. But I was happy. And then, a year ago today or so, I went back to college. I went back to where I am right now,
Okay.
and I couldn't do it because I was working. I was doing, all my work for classes, socializing with friends, doing stuff that I wasn't doing at home where I had a lot of time. And then I forgot about TikTok.
Mm.
I said, I have, 50,000 followers, but I don't owe them anything. I said, I just kind of wanted to live my life. I made the content, but I want to live here and just, have my life to do because I was graduating and I wanted to, make sure that I was handling whatever I needed to do. And I forgot about TikTok for 4 months, especially. Then comes May, I come back to TikTok, or June, I think it was, and I start posting again, and I get no exposure. I get no views, pretty much, maybe a
Yeah.
couple hundred compared to the tens of thousands I was getting. I said, "What's going on? This doesn't make any sense." I got a million likes in January, the last January, and then I was getting like maybe 100 likes. I said, "This is stupid." I have the 50,000 followers, and I realized it's because people just didn't, or they didn't see your videos. So, especially on TikTok, the algorithm didn't work.
The algorithm
It
forgot
has to
about
keep,
you.
it has to keep working.
Yeah.
So that's why over the past month I've been making a new video like every other day
Uh.
because you got to keep on the roll. Because once you get that video that exposes you and shows you to the algorithm and the For You page, people will start to see you, and the more people that follow you, the more people see your videos. It's just like a train, it just keeps going.
Right.
So,
You know
so
what?
I got, yeah,
You know what? That's what I've noticed too. The consistency. I know my videos are in no way, shape, or form educational the way yours are, but I've been noticing that when I started posting them, every video would get like maybe 30, 50 views. And now, like 3 weeks down the road, I'm up to like almost getting up to the like 190, 200 views already. Just getting up there. And
mhm,
what I had heard at when I was looking into like how do you do this, well, how do you make content and all this and all that, when I was trying to learn about it with the TikTok, what I read about that was that at the beginning with the algorithm to hook you, what it does is that if you post a video when you had just opened your account, what it does is it puts you on everybody's For You, so that way everybody sees you and you're getting more likes. So that way it hooks you. But
mhm.
if you don't start posting videos and maintain yourself consistent, it'll just drop you and just not catch you anymore until you maintain the consistency, until you force the algorithm to catch you again. And I think that's where probably you went wrong. The algorithm just dropped you because there was no more coming from you. But
Yeah,
I'm glad you're back, and that's how I found you. I'm glad I could have this conversation with you, man.
yeah. I'm glad I'm glad I'm back too. And it's very weird because I'm sure you've heard about the popularity of TikTok, how it's one of the most popular, if not the most popular social
Right.
media app
It is,
for
yeah.
2022. And the way it works is just crazy because the algorithm can take a random video from, a random account that posts, maybe 4 videos so far. You have like 100, 250 views on the 3 videos. And then all of a sudden they have a video that gets 1 million views.
Yeah. Yeah.
And the algorithm works in crazy ways. So it's not always up to whether or not you're posting constantly. It's just up to luck and if your video meets a certain criteria. So
It's probably, yeah. More than likely, you're right.
yeah.
Yeah. At the beginning when you started talking, you mentioned that you were working on something. I didn't catch it. And I didn't want to cut you off because you started describing yourself. What did you say you were
Yeah.
working on?
I'm working on my master's thesis right now. So
Oh, okay,
that is
okay.
in an area of tectonic geomorphology. I'll break that down for you.
Yes, please.
Most people hear geology, but they don't know the different types of areas. Uh,
That's what I heard.
Tectonic obviously has to do with earthquakes,
Okay.
tectonic activity. Geomorphology is studying the processes of the earth that shape different landscapes, erosion, water activity, flow of rivers and all of that. So you combine them. Tectonic geomorphology is how earthquakes shape the landscape of the earth. So I live in New York. I'm working up in Binghamton, but my thesis is based in 2 cities. One is called Saratoga Springs. The other is called Glens Falls. Saratoga Springs is famous for its for the state park, the Saratoga Springs State Park, where it has hydrothermal, or not hydrothermal, geothermal. It has natural springs,
What is the
basically, that are,
difference between hydro and
uh,
geothermal?
I should know that, but, you know, hydrothermal, hydrothermal is based on, it's not natural from the earth. Geothermal activity is natural activity from springs, but hydrothermal, I believe, hydrothermal is has to do with the vents in the deep ocean. Hydrothermal,
Because
geothermal is like springs.
okay. Oh,
So
geo
hydrothermal has to do with like the
ocean.
Mariana Trench. You'll have these vents that are coming up spewing
Gases,
sulfuric
sulfur.
acids,
Yeah,
yeah,
yeah.
all of that stuff.
Oh, okay.
Um, but the geothermal springs are what you see in Yosemite, where you'll have just the geysers going off. But you'll have in Saratoga Springs, it's kind of like a little bit smaller scale. You'll have just tiny springs that are going, but it's the result of tectonic activity.
Right.
So there was a study done in 1993 where a man named Stephen Tice from Binghamton University did the same sort of area, same study, using different methods to find whether or not a fault was active in the last 10,000 years, which is geologically recent time, because obviously 4.6 billion years, a small sliver of that is like a couple
Yeah.
thousand years.
Right. Of course.
Um, so my study is going off of his study, but I'm using newer methods to say, okay, if I study this area and I use these newer methods and I don't find anything, it's more than likely that hasn't been any activity, because he did his study, he didn't find anything. He said, well, I'm saying there's no activity, but someone else should come back and continue it. So
Right.
I have until May to get that done.
Oh, okay. Okay. Well, hopefully, we find out some good information out of that, right?
Yeah, yeah.
Something
And if
juicy.
I once I'm done, I'd be happy to come back and talk with you about it
Oh
if I
yes,
get some good
please.
results.
Please, but you know what? You're gonna have to get a hold of me because I just keep going and I have a very bad memory and
Of course, yeah,
and I'll be honest with you, it's not that I intentionally forget about people because there's people that have messaged me and I see the message, but at the time I'm busy and I was like, I'll get back to them later, but I keep going and I completely forget about it. But
yeah.
I try not to be a jerk like that. So if I'm a jerk to you, I apologize in
No,
advance.
definitely not. I'm kind of the same way. I get the messages and someone will ask me a question about a rock they found. I'll like mentally respond to it in my head, but then I'll just forget about the message. I'll see it a couple days later and I'll say, "Oh my gosh, I forgot to respond." But yeah,
Exactly.
I will 100%, reach out to you if I have any
Yes.
results. And I'd love to do that again, because this is the first time I've had this kind of a, talk with someone on this level, talking about what I like to do.
Dude,
So
I'm glad you're telling me this, because I'll tell you this just so you feel a little excitement, just so you know who you're talking to. No, I'm just kidding. But I had a gentleman that his TikTok was all about comics.
mhm.
And I had him for the first time on my podcast, and I talked to him. I got to know him just like I'm having a conversation with you about what you do and your interest. And I got to talk to him, and a couple months down the road, he got into something big. I'm not saying it was because of me, but I'm giving credit the work that he was doing. But it was pretty exciting to know that he got into something big, and he even got invited to like a movie, it was like one of the not the Marvel. What's the other one?
DC.
DC, right? It was one of DC's new movies at the time. This was like 2019 or 18, yeah, 19 or 2020. I don't remember, but
I
anyway.
could just imagine it was because of you. I think you had a very strong
Oh,
influence
you're
on
you're
it.
you're very kind. Thank you.
No, but this is such a, a cool opportunity, not just because it's a, in the podcast format, but that's what I was so excited about when I finally started getting the recognition on my channel, is because I started reaching out to more and more people, and I didn't even know these people were on TikTok or were making this kind of content.
Right.
There's a whole different world that's out there, and connecting with people is the most important part of all of this. You can get the likes, the views, the shares, the comments, but what really matters is the building these relationships with people that you
Yes.
can build off of.
Yeah. You know what? If it wasn't for what I'm doing, I would have never gotten to talk to so many cool people that I've gotten to talk to. I don't know if you know. I'm gonna brag about this because this is exciting for me. I got a hold. And it's not even much bragging because I really forgot her name, and it's really bad. But it's a doctor. She lives in France. She works at the CERN that plays with the hydrogen
Mhm.
collider. And that I really find interesting because I have no clue what that is. But I see the pictures of the hydrogen collider, and I'm like, what is that? What does that do? And also, they say they have pipes dug up into the ground. That they go from one end to another. I don't know where, but they put the hydrogens in there. They make them collide. I don't know, at the speed of light or something like that. Whatever it is that
Mhm.
they do, I'm pretty excited about that, because I'm actually talking to her, and we're scheduling something for the future, but I'm excited about that. And like what I was trying to say is that I'm really glad I decided to do this because I've gotten to meet really cool people, like I think you're very cool, man. You're into something that most people would say you're boring because you're into rocks, but really there's more to that than it's just a rock. There's
No, they'd be correct. It is boring. No, I'm just kidding. No, but that's the thing, because the same can be said about so many different areas of science. And like you said, the hydro collider, it's something that seems kind of boring if you first say it, but if you get to know what it actually is about, it's incredibly interesting and cool. And knowing the things that different people are doing, if you just tell someone that you're a biologist and say, you're like, all right,
what do
they
you
work
know?
with, yeah, but you see what they're doing on TikTok, which lets people post these interesting videos about their work,
Mm-hmm.
which is what I want to do. I'm posting these, videos about all breaking the rocks open to find the minerals, but I want to be able to go travel the world, find these really cool minerals in different places, and then show them where it's just like, hey, instead of finding this small piece of quartz that isn't that cool, I found this sapphire in this mine. That's what I want to get up to. It's the building of a
Right.
of a channel that wasn't it couldn't have been possible without that engagement already. And you know, your podcast that you're doing right now, a year down the line, you might have famous celebrities that you're working with on your podcast. You never know unless you just keep going at it, keep trying.
Yeah. Well, my goal is to get ads and get something going because I'm tired of working construction. So I want this to be my job. So I'm putting in my hours. That's how I like to see it. I
Mhm.
There is a quote that I like repeating, and I've said it to many people, and I've said it to here. And if anybody's heard it, well, I'm sorry, but I'm going to say it again. Is that it takes 10,000 hours to become a professional at anything,
Mhm.
whatever the your calling is, whatever you choose. Then it takes 10,000 hours of you working at it for you to become a professional at it. So the way I'm looking at things is I'm just putting in my hours, and I like to
Of
put in
course.
more
Yeah.
hours. So, but
Mhm.
yes. Well, Ethan, really, I really, really appreciate your time, and I really appreciate you. And thank you very much for giving me the opportunity to have this conversation with you. And when you're done with that study that you got going on, I would like to know more about it because I was pretty much lost when you explained a little bit about it. But when you're done with it, I would really appreciate it if you explain it to me more because it's interesting what you do. I know a lot of people would tell you, like I mentioned you earlier, oh, you're boring. You're just a rock guy. But it's interesting to know that whatever rock you've gotten in your hand and you split it open, that the inside of that rock hasn't I can't even talk. Hasn't seen the light of day in millions of years, possibly, right?
Yeah, yeah, that is true. And I love when people bring that up because, you know, the cool part about that is I'm splitting open a rock that, I could just be the person to see that, toss it back in the river, and then no one will ever see it again. I'm sharing that with the people. I'm sharing with
Right.
the people who want to see it. And, that's happening even at this moment, deep in the crust. That is what's happening. New rock being formed, crystallized, that in, thousands, hundreds of thousands of years will be unearthed for someone else to see
If
if we're still around
if
then.
Russia and Ukraine didn't blow us up,
If the earth doesn't blow up by itself, who knows,
or
who
or
knows when.
right, or we get hit by an asteroid or something that we didn't see coming, which that's a
You got it.
possibility too. What about those rocks? I didn't even ask you about those rocks.
Have you seen the Don't Look Up series on Netflix?
I have not, but I've heard good and bad things, but more
Mhm.
bad things. So I'm leaning into I'm probably not going to watch it, but I should probably give it a chance. What do you think? I'll
It's
go off of
it's
what you say.
definitely it's a message that the scientists want the public to
Okay.
know,
Okay.
because it's just basically satire of the media and how it interacts with science, how the media is always looking to have a cheerful, uplifting message, even when times are horrible, and you know, uh, you know, it needs to be terrifying
Mm-hmm.
for you to know what's really happening. Luckily, that's not what's happening right now. We're not under any threat of any asteroids to, collide with the Earth and cause a mass extinction. But the important thing is relying on science and relying on the people who are experts to
Right.
educate the public on not even just space events, but with COVID, relying on the science that's being done and researched, relying on the environmental science that's being done to help mitigate climate change. All of these issues are really important, and as much as self research is important to know for yourself instead of relying on the media, the scientists that come out and produce these results, they've been working for tens of years on these projects, and they need to be trusted because that's their purpose in the world.
Right. To get that information out there, then maybe one day it'll save some lives, right?
Exactly,
Sure,
that's the
yeah,
goal.
definitely. Well, Ethan, I gotta say, man, I had really great time having this conversation with you. I was really nervous at first because, like I said, it's been a couple weeks since I've talked to anybody. But
Trust me, my heart was going at the beginning. I was like, I have not done something like this before, but you really made it a great experience. Thank you,
I'm,
Oscar. I
I'm,
really
I'm
appreciate having
glad.
me.
I'm glad you had a good time too, man. Please go ahead and plug again all your social medias. Do you have a YouTube yet or
I don't have a YouTube, no, but the main uh, uh, profiles that I have, obviously, where I'm famous, or not really famous, but I'm well
yeah,
known
you
on
are.
TikTok. The Rockman Ethan. My Twitter is just Rockman_Ethan. My Instagram, I have two Instagrams. My Geology one is Rockman Ethan, just like the TikTok, and then my personal is just ETHMPEN. That's my name, FM Pen. And I think that's it. Yeah, just those four, I believe, but mainly the TikTok. That's where people can really reach me, and I try to respond to as many comments as I can. But if anyone has a question at all, Instagram is much easier to reach me.
Awesome. All right. Well, Ethan, thank you very much for giving me the opportunity to have this conversation with you. And like I said, and I'll say it again, I really appreciate you and your time. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Oscar. I appreciate
Uh,
you having me, and I hope you have a really great rest of your year. If I don't get to talk to you for a certain amount of time, but I will reach out to you whenever I have those results that you're looking for.
you will. You definitely get to talk to me this year again. And so just please send me a message. And like I said, I will stay in contact and we'll go from there, man. I really appreciate you. Thank you.
Gotcha, man.
Well, ladies and gentlemen, again, thank you very much. This was great. How fun is it to know about things you don't know about? And was that weird to say, I guess? I don't know. But if it's weird, who cares? I just think that it's awesome, to know about things you don't know, like rocks. Who would have thought that I would know anything about that? Anyways, thank you very much for listening to Our Two Cents. This was a great time with Our Two Cents, your host, Oscar. I really appreciate it. Go ahead and subscribe to the YouTube channel. Hit the follow on all the social medias. The link is right there on the bio. Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen, and non-binary folk. Deuces.